Hello, gardening friends. Today is October 1st, and it's a beautifully cool day here in my Zone 8B garden. Miss Mimi knows something's afoot because the hose is out, and she and water just don't get along. We've not had any rain here in my part of the Gulf Coast, and so I'm going to be doing some watering today. Unfortunately, there was a whole lot of watering going on in Southwest Florida and up the East Coast due to Hurricane Ian. And my heart goes out, and prayers go out to those people that have suffered through the flooding and the storm damage of Ian. It's an old saying, there but for the grace of God go I. Living on the Gulf Coast, hurricanes are a possibility every year. And even though we're used to them, or at least we prepare for them, we're never quite ready for them when they come. It kind of puts life in perspective, and you get to realize what's truly important. And you find out eventually that stuff isn't all that important. Of course, if you've just collected a lot of stuff through the years, it can be taken away in a skinny minute. I've had that happen to me, never from a hurricane, but I know it's something traumatic to get over. But you will get over it. Life does go on. In any event, it's very dry here, and there's no rain forecast for the next couple of weeks. So what I'm having to do is pretty much water every morning. Since I have a fairly big yard, it's really only 1/8 of an acre, but for me, it's quite a lot to maintain. It keeps me busy. I've divided it up into quadrants, 2 in the backyard, 2 in the front yard. And what I tend to do, or not tend, what I do in times like this is I'll water 1 quadrant a day really well, and then move on to the next one tomorrow. Try to keep the potted plants watered every day. I find this very relaxing because I'll spend usually an hour watering everything. I promise this video is not going to last an hour. I'll be out here for an hour. I just find this very relaxing. And at the same time, you get to do an appraisal of your garden and see what's doing well, what's not doing well, what you may have to look at, what the animals ate last night, what you have to look forward to this year. You're kind of, I guess the way to explain it is when you're watering, or actually whenever, well, I tend to do this. I am always present. I'm here when I'm in my garden. I'm not thinking about things that need to be done. This is not a chore for me to get through and check off my list. I'm just here looking at the garden and enjoying it. And I guess that's what I want to talk about a little bit today is some advice to new gardeners. You know, this garden is 30 years old, but at one time it was a new garden, and there was pretty much nothing here but for a few oak trees. And I guess the first bit of advice I would have is accept the fact that no matter how much effort you put into your garden, no matter how much money you spend on it, it's never going to be done. There will always be one more chore to do, one more plant to buy, one more weed to pull out. It's never going to be done. So when you see these gardening programs that show you a before and after, it's a before and after, but it's a snapshot in time. Those after videos or shots are not going to stay that way. Gardens evolve, they change, and we have to evolve with them. I find a garden very healing because I'm present in the garden. Well, actually, I'm present here most of the time because I turn my phone off. Since I am retired, I can do that without having any problems. I know you younger people may think I'm crazy, but I have my phone, of course I can do it, on Do Not Disturb for a major portion of the day. And I never answer the phone for numbers that I don't recognize. It's amazing how you can get rid of a lot of junk calls that way and spam calls. Good thing about this today, I noticed no animals were in this fountain last night, because when they are, the water's very muddy and dirty, and it's not that today. Let's see, what was I talking about? Advice to new gardeners. Another thing is, don't get caught up in planning. Yes, you do need to do a little bit of planning. You can obsess on it. And you're welcome to, if you enjoy planning, that's fine. But to me, half of the major enjoyment of gardening is in the doing, not so much the planning. And there is a lot to be said for getting your hands in the soil. It does sort of bring you to the earth. Or as the saying goes, for those of us older people, we hear it more and more, that we're all going to become dust eventually. So it sort of ties us into Mother Nature. That is the one beauty of gardening, is you really do feel closer to nature. It's hard to be a gardener and not be, what's the right word? Not mesmerized, but awestruck in terms of what can happen. You know, you plant a seed and a plant comes up. I mean, it's just awesome. It's a miracle, really. There are little miracles around us all the time. We just have to learn to appreciate them. This plant's doing really well. That was the one that the little snippet came over across under the fence from my neighbor. The other thing about gardening is plants are going to die. You're not going to be able to maintain a beautiful garden. Well, you can maintain a beautiful garden. Just expect it to change with time. Things will go in and out of flower, and you can plan such a way that you always have something in flower. However, that doesn't come easily. The best advice I would give someone if they wanted to start gardening is drive around your area where you live. Go into the older areas of town. Don't stay in the new developments, because that's kind of cookie cutter. Everyone gets the same plants. But go into the established neighborhoods around town and see what they've done, what's growing in their yard. And that'll give you kind of a clue to what may grow in your yard. You may not want it, and that's fine, but at least you get an idea of what will grow, what possibly you can have in your yard. The other issue is to visit as many gardens as you can visit. Read as many books or truthfully, like I do, look through as many gardening books as you can. Does anyone really read a gardening book? In any event, look through as many gardening books as you can. There are plenty of videos on YouTube that you can follow. You do have to be wary of YouTube, as with any digital source, is know your source, basically. There are a lot of people out there, younger people, that have videos or that have YouTube channels, and God bless them, more power to them. However, when they start giving advice, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt if they're just starting a new garden. And I say that there are plenty of shows that I watch in this country and in England and Scotland, and actually in Ireland, where there are young people that have established gardens, that have vegetable plots that they've been growing for many years. Those people I would trust more so than a gardening program where they've just got new acreage and they've got fantastic plans and they're planting up a storm, and that's fine. However, we don't get a chance to learn from their mistakes because they're not making any. For instance, last year, if you've watched a lot of gardening programs, there was this, I noticed it because I watch a lot of gardening programs. It seemed like there was 3 or 4 programs that I watched in the US where everyone suddenly wanted to seed poppies in their fields, under their trees and their orchards. And they all got the seeds, which are not cheap, and some even got bags of seed, which I imagine would be quite costly, probably at least $50, if not $100 worth of seed. And they spread them out on the lawns in the fall, under the orchards, in their yards, in their, their areas that they wanted to have as a wild garden, and recommended that we all do that. Well, if we did, well, where are the pictures of their poppies this year? Not one of the shows that recommended doing that had any poppies to show for it, or at least showed any poppies in the spring. And that's really a misfortune, or misfortune. We could have all learned from that. It's like people make mistakes, and that's how we learn. But if you don't publish your mistakes, then we're all learning at the same time, and we're all going to make the same mistakes. So in any event, know your sources. Plenty of channels out there to watch on YouTube. Find the presenter you like. There are some presenters I like, some presenters that kind of are annoying to me, but I can still learn from them. I'm an old man, but I'm still a young gardener. I forgot who said that. That was either Benjamin Franklin or, gosh, I can't think of anyone else who is. I don't think it was George Washington. He wasn't into gardening. In any event, I'm always learning something. You can always learn something new about gardening. So you will make mistakes. You will lose plants. And that's okay. Accept that fact. Now, here's the thing you don't hear from a lot of shows. And that is, buy your plants at a big box store. Both Lowe's and Home Depot have guarantees on their plants. So if you want to buy a perennial, you don't know if it's going to grow in your yard, get it from one of these stores with a guarantee. If it does, what you need to do is save your receipt. I even saved the pot and all of the tags that came with it in a spot in my shed, and save it. If the plant dies, Yank it out of the ground, bring it back, get your money back. Don't be ashamed to do that. I mean, that's why they have the warranties. Not many people take them up on it. I happen to be one of those that does. In fact, when I used to have a garden in upstate New York, I was forever buying plants for my urns here. And of course, they would die over the summer, and I'd get my money back in the fall. I'll probably roast in hell for a while for that, but it works. You can get your money back. If you don't want to spend a lot of money on plants, get them in the off seasons. They do go on sale, although I have to admit sales have changed. I know Lowe's has changed their policy. They only reduced their plants so much. Prior to that, 10 years ago, you could actually talk to the managers themselves and get a deal for a particular plant that had some damage to it, but they've done away with all that. However, things change. Multiply your plants. If you find a plant that lives, divide it. That way you get plants for free. The key is you should enjoy gardening. If you don't enjoy it, you're doing it wrong. So there you have it. I meant to mention, if you're handicapped, Gardener's World, you'll have to see which particular episode, but they typically show gardens of common people in England as opposed to the presenters. And they do show gardens of handicapped people. People that are blind, people that are in wheelchairs, people that have physical abnormalities that you would think would make it impossible for them to garden. And where there's a will, there's a way. You know, they have been able to successfully find ways to garden. So if you're handicapped, you can still garden. You may be able to just garden in pots. That's fine. There are plenty of gardening programs that'll tell you how to grow food in pots, how to grow potted plants, just inside plants. So basically anyone can garden. There's really no excuse to not garden. It's just a matter of you wanting to garden. Uh-oh, Mimi sees me watering, is deathly afraid of the water. Actually, I'm coming up on the deck next because I have to water the potted plants. Don't worry, Mimi, I'm not getting you. But, and you may see by the way that I'm on this ramp, I was in a wheelchair a couple of years ago, and the guy that works with me on Thursdays actually built this ramp for me. It's a wheelchair ramp, and I was in bad enough shape that I was not able to walk, and so to go to a doctor visit, we used to have to call an ambulance, and the ambulance would charge for the visit, but since I had 3 steps to come down, I'd have to call a separate group of people for lifting me up and down the steps. So the ambulance visit was the ambulance taking me to a doctor visit was, depending on distance, probably $300 or $400. And it was $200 just to get me lifted up and down the steps in a wheelchair. So we built this ramp, and although I'm no longer wheelchair bound, I keep it. So, and actually the garden is responsible for, in a big way, for making me get better faster. Because with this ramp, I was able to get out in the yard, and I was able to do some gardening. And in a way, you know, I kept it alive, and it did the same for me. So that's about it for today. I wish you all the best in your gardens, and have a good day. I'm done. Bye-bye.